Let's do it.
Hello, everybody. It is Sunday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our Steelers post-game show after a Steelers victory against the Cleveland Browns at Acrisure Stadium by Post-Gazette sports columnist Paul Zeise. Paul, you're at Acrisure Stadium right now, having just taken it in live. You are now, I think, in the cafeteria. So we're going to break it all down here. I'm excited to dig into it. This show is presented by FanDuel. Also want to thank our sponsor, Pella Windows and Doors. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Paul, I think there's a lot of different ways we could go here. A very solid day from the defense. Offense had its moments as well. It wasn't always pretty, but they made some big plays when they had to kind of win this one comfortably. I do think that the defense is probably the bigger story for me of the two today, so I kind of wanted to start there. 6 more sacks of Dillon Gabriel. Jalen Ramsey was everywhere. Nick Herbig was everywhere. Derrick Harmon got in on the party at one point in the game. So let me ask the question this way, Paul. Was this just a matter of you're facing the Browns, you're facing a rookie quarterback, this team's not very good that they played today? Or do you believe that the volume of sacks, the way they just kept the pressure on all day is reflective of the fact that they're maybe beginning to figure things out regardless of the competition?
I think, honestly, Adam, this Dillon Gabriel was in so far over his head. He made some nice throws. It's clear you can see what they like about him. He does have a nice little arm, and he's semi-accurate, but he's tiny, number one, and number two, he was really, the moment was too big for him. So, I think it's good that the Steelers, asserted themselves like they're supposed to, but it's kind of one of those things where if you really look at it, once they started to smell a little blood in the water, it became very, very easy for them to go after him, to hit him, to get sacks. It just became very, very evident that Cleveland was overwhelmed, and so, but look, that's what good teams do. I don't want it to come off like a negative. The truth is, this team was overwhelmed a little bit. The Browns offense was overwhelmed. And I was surprised. I wonder if they had not had that little drive for a field goal right before half, would we have seen Shedeur Sanders in the second half of this game? Because to me, I don't know. Again, I don't sit and watch film. I don't evaluate. I'm not in the meeting rooms. I don't know. I'll grant all that. But if this is their best option at quarterback, I don't think they're going to win another game. And I mean that. And I literally don't think the Browns will win another game if this is their best option at quarterback.
But would do you really think Shedeur Sanders would have made a difference? Because here was my, I think observation is that the pressure does feel different. And the numbers reflect that. You can see it in 6 sacks against the Vikings, 6 sacks today, against the Browns. So that's 12 sacks in 2 games. Pretty damn good there. But I think it's also reflective in just, the clock. When you're watching a game, when a quarterback needs to get it out. And it just seems like they are speeding up everybody so much more right now, and that this pass rush is kind of becoming what, we've anticipated, what we got used to for the last couple of years before last year, where the Steelers are toward the top of the league in sacks. They haven't been that for a period of time. We know that they weren't able to unlock TJ Watt. It seems like teams are still having to contend with TJ Watt, but there are so many different threats that are starting to come through, and not just from, those linebacker spots. I think that's Jalen Ramsey's third in 2 weeks, third sack from a cornerback spot. So it does feel a little bit different, even if the result were the Steelers going to win the game, that was probably never in doubt. What was in doubt for me is how they're going to look, and I think they are starting to look different to me.
Well, I think TJ Watt obviously is playing well. Obviously, Nick Herbig is a guy that's adding some things. I think we've saw a little bit more what I would call blitzes today than we have. Jalen Ramsey had a couple of sacks. They're sending guys from all different angles. It looks like they're really becoming a lot more diverse in how they're attacking the quarterback. So, yeah, absolutely. Their defense to me, is starting to dial it up, and they're starting to play really well. Next week, or well, actually this week, more technically, this week they're going to play, Joe Flacco, assuming he survives this game. And so they should have another day where they lick their chops and just, pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. But again, teams will adjust, and we'll see what happens as they move forward and they start to play some teams that maybe have better quarterbacks. I think, obviously, listen, the best thing you can say, and I know this isn't very sexy or whatever for, post-game show where we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other things, but the best thing I can say about this game is that the Steelers did what good teams do. One of the reasons that Mike Tomlin is around for 20 years is because generally, I know there's the whole Tomlin game thing, which is way overstated. But in general, when they play a team like this, they handle business, and at first they were a little bit conservative on offense. You want to know why? Because he understands the only way to give a team like this life is to turn the ball over and make bad plays, and put them in short field situations. So as long as they had the game in control, that's what they did. They controlled the game, and their defense controlled the offense of the Browns. I just think that, this Dillon Gabriel, and maybe I'll be wrong. I'm usually not wrong when I see it, but I'm going to tell you, I don't see this kid being a starting quarterback in the NFL for very long. I just don't see it.
Paul, I wanted to ask about Derrick Harmon specifically because I think this quasi turnaround for the defense that kind of started in that New England game has continued through the last two, almost exactly coincided with Derrick Harmon arriving back on the scene. Today he finishes with the 1 sack. He also had 2 QB hits. He had 4 tackles. I've listened to Ray Fittipaldo specifically talk a lot on our podcasts about how the pass rush has been stymied by the fact that you're not getting a lot of interior rush, that you're not getting a lot of pressure, both in the run and the pass, but especially the pass from that spot. Is that maybe one of the key differences here, is that he is a guy that, opposing offenses need to take seriously. And I'm not going to call him an all-pro, or he's got a long way to go to develop and become, maybe the Stephon Tuitt to Cam Heyward at some point. We got a long way to go. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but he's doing good work right now. And is that maybe part of the reason this whole unit is working a little bit better around him? Because that was the thing that this defense most needed, at least in terms of the pass defense.
Well, yeah, I think one of the biggest things that is, I've said that from the start, when you go draft a guy like him, and you draft him to be plug and play, Adam, which is what they did. They drafted him to be a plug and play guy. Everything that we've seen from him in 3 weeks, and he's just getting started. I think he is a wrecker, a play wrecker. I think he's a guy who, the 1 sack they credited to TJ, I think. If you look at that sack, Dillon Gabriel kind of came up in the pocket, and basically the entire pocket was like Harmon had like 3 Browns offensive linemen and the quarterback in his arms. I think he's a beast, and I think obviously that's a huge piece for them, because I think, one of the things he is a run stopper, but he's also that guy, that real rare sort of, and I'm not comparing him to Aaron Donald yet, but he's that rare inside guy that is explosive enough to blow up plays both against the pass and against the run. And I think that, that was really evident again today. He was active. You could see him. He showed up on film. You bring back a good player, or you bring in a good player, guess what? It's going to show up. And so, yes, I think that's a big part of it. I'm a big fan of him. Was a big fan of him when they drafted him. Was a big fan of him, before he got hurt. And basically said, I'm not going to judge this defense till he gets back. And guess what? Now he's back, and all of a sudden it's hard to run against them, and it's hard to do a whole lot against them. So I'm not saying he's the only factor. I think Patrick Queen, I don't know. He played like his helmet was on fire today. It was all over the place. Jalen Ramsey obviously is just getting more and more comfortable. He's becoming a bigger factor. I think Deshaun Elliott has helped him getting healthy. Nick Herbig is playing really well. But to me, you bring in a guy like him. He's your first-round pick. You drafted him for exactly what he's doing.
Paul, you mentioned Jalen Ramsey there, the 2 sacks today. He's been active in pretty much all of these games. Hasn't been perfect, especially early on. He was, giving up some chunk plays in the passing game as well. But you notice him in all of these games. And I think a big criticism of Minkah Fitzpatrick over the last couple of years was you didn't necessarily notice him as much. And the Steelers' pass defense was leaky at times, especially against good teams. Is Jalen Ramsey yet validating that move in your mind in terms of shaking up this defense, giving opponents a different look? Listen, I think we both agree that Minkah Fitzpatrick's a good player, but I'm seeing maybe a better fit for Jalen Ramsey right now. Is that how you're feeling, or do you still need to see a lot more before you're going to declare that trade a success?
I really like Jalen Ramsey for what he does, which is allow Joey Porter Jr. to do other things. And I think Jalen Ramsey is a guy who's a gamer too. You can tell he loves to play football. You can tell that he's pretty cocky and he knows that he's good and he's not worried to be, you need that guy. And I agree with you. Different positions, but he shows up a lot more than Minkah Fitzpatrick did. And I think that one of the things about it is he shows up in different ways, like today with the sacks. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever, where he came up and lit up a running back, and it was one of those like big game changing kind of hits. He's obviously a guy who defends. His pass defense is what it is. I think he's a great addition to what they're doing from the standpoint of he gives them a little bit more of that edge, maybe that they still didn't have, even though they had Watt and they've got a guy back there that kind of gives them an edge. He's got a little nasty streak in him. He's cocky, like I said. He's confident in himself. He makes a mistake or maybe gets beaten. The next thing you know, he comes back and makes a big play. He's to me everything he's advertised as. When they brought him here, he's been that and then some.
Paul, you mentioned Nick Herbig as well. All over the place today. He seems to, more than anyone on this team, make the most of the snaps that he plays. Did it with Alex Highsmith back in the lineup. I think it's different if Nick Herbig was playing more snaps because of injury, but he really wasn't per se. He's starting to become a bit of a problem for Omar Khan, not so much for Mike Tomlin. I'm sure Mike Tomlin loves having him being able to deploy him, but in terms of looking down the road, how do you keep these 3 pass rushers together when he is playing this well? And I think he's starting to get attention around the NFL. He's starting to become a name that people know, and not just that depth guy you plug in who maybe makes a play or two in a game, but a guy teams are going to have to start to fear if he keeps this up. Right.
If I'm looking at his contract correctly, and I think I am. He's an undrafted. He's a free agent after next year, so they still have one more year with him, and they have Alex Highsmith, for another year or two as well. So to me, that's a good problem to have, but they don't have to confront that yet. They could give him an extension. I think that because they're not really paying their quarterback anything. If they wanted to give him an extension and have these 3 guys, you need a rotation of 3 guys. And if you have 3 guys where there's no drop-off no matter who's in, now all of a sudden you become a completely different animal altogether. So I like him. I like the way that they mixed him in. And, it's interesting. Alex Highsmith made some plays today. He showed up a little bit. It's amazing what competition can do for guys. That's all I'll say. Is when you got guys that are competing for snaps, it's kind of amazing how these things work.
Patrick Queen, you mentioned him as well. 9 tackles today. Only Deshaun Elliott had more. He had the 1 pass defense. He had that 1 huge hit on Ford late in the game there. What's working with him that wasn't early in the year, that wasn't certainly at the end of last year where he was kind of in the eye of the storm in terms of what went wrong against the run against the Ravens? Is it just a matter of him potentially just feeling more comfortable in this defense, having a year of experience with it, having made a lot of mistakes, having watched a lot of film with it? Because that's how it feels, is that he just has reached that comfort level, and now you're seeing the fruits of it in the second year of this big contract that he got last spring.
Well, I'll say this. he's really his last two games come on, right? What were we just talking about maybe 3 or 4 minutes ago that has changed within the last 3 games that might be significant for an inside linebacker? I mean, look, you have an inside linebacker. If you've got a guy in front of you like Derrick Harmon, right? All of a sudden, your job becomes a heck of a lot easier. All of a sudden, you're not getting, especially against the run, you're not getting lost in 300-pounders because he's taking them all on for you. I think that's a big part of it. Now you can see, he's just starting to really fly around the field, and he's coming up and he's hitting people. He's just playing, I think, a much looser, freer kind of game, and I think it's important that it is year 2. But I also think having a guy like Derrick Harmon in front of him is probably what I would tell you is a big factor.
Paul, I want to talk about the offense on the other side of this break. Before we do, want to thank another sponsor. It's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci, Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorneys, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers with over 85 years of experience. They know how to uncover the truth. They have the experience you need, the commitment your family deserves. They've recovered millions for individuals affected by mesothelioma and other cancers due to asbestos exposure. Call them toll-free at 1-877-227-6558 or visit them online at sdklaw.com. Paul, it was an interesting, I think, offensive performance today. Uneven, ugly at times. It's a good ugly. I'm struggling to articulate this kind of grindy offense they're playing with Aaron Rodgers. That's heavy. Obviously, you had Spencer Anderson in there a ton as a sixth offensive lineman. You had Darnell Washington in there as practically almost a seventh offensive lineman at times, but also as a pass threat. You ran the ball okay. You hit the big plays when you needed to. It wasn't beautiful, but it worked against this team. Is it as simple as they knew what they needed to do against the Browns today? They didn't need to do a whole lot, and that's okay on a day like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think one of the secrets to, the never having a losing season thing with Mike Tomlin is that in games like this, he generally does not like to be like, there's some people that want him to open it up and, let's just blow this team out, but that's not really how it works in the NFL. He likes to control these games against bad teams. And his basically saying, we're not going to put our offense out there in bad situations, and we're not going to put our defense out there in bad situations. We know we can control the game. And as long as we don't give this team short fields, they're not going to drive the field against us and score. So to me, they were effective in what they did. They were effective in how they did it. They protected the football, which is, they do a really good job. And the reality is, I think one of the things is, we had that discussion earlier this week about throwing the deep ball. Well, I mean, I think we got an partial answer as to why that deep ball isn't thrown on the one pass that Aaron Rodgers threw that was about 6 yards short of where it needed to be. It was just like a wounded duck. So to me, you got a guy like Rodgers who understands the offense, who understands offense in general, who understands defenses and reading defenses, and is willing to take what they're going to give him. There was a couple of plays where he's running for his life. You don't want that for your 42-year-old quarterback. So I know people. Listen. It's hard to watch. It's not fun to watch, but it's effective. And you know what? While you're playing these bad teams, being effective is good enough. Like this week you play the Bengals with Joe Flacco. I mean, effective is good enough. And so if your goal is to like have a fancy offense, then I guess you want to have a fancy offense. But if your goal is to win, effective is good enough. At least in my book. I don't know, Adam. I don't need style points in regular season games against bad teams. I just don't.
Well, and I feel like they're giving their offensive line a chance to kind of figure things out. I think they tried early on to let those guys, get the trial by fire and prove themselves, but that didn't work. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was under attack, and your only chance for this season is to keep him clean. So I think it is noteworthy. People have been pointing it out in the comments. 0 sacks against Myles Garrett and this very good Browns defense today. Part of that is definitely that you're putting in that heavier personnel. You have more guys to block. So if you have 7 blocking 4-man fronts, you shouldn't be giving up sacks, right, Paul? But I think you also got to give credit to the offensive line as well for maybe getting a chance to gel. And maybe as we're sitting here a month from now, you're going to be talking about this pass protection group as a strength that's coming together rather than a liability, because Arthur Smith was able to say, listen, we've got the pieces to be able to help these guys out in the interim. We're playing some bad teams, especially this week in terms of Cleveland and Cincinnati. Let's just keep it simple and let's give those guys support, and let's not put Aaron Rodgers in a position where he's going to get injured in a game that you should be winning anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about protecting Aaron Rodgers in my book. You want him to be healthy for the playoffs. You want him to be healthy for the stretch run. And here's the other thing. Right after they play the Bengals, right? Then their next game after the Bengals, they get 8 or 10 games, but then they get the Packers and the Colts and the Chargers. And so, those are 3 games where you might have to open it up a little bit. You might have to play a little bit, a little less closer to the vest, and you might have to do that. That might be what happens in those games. In those games, it's different. But as long as you're playing teams that you should beat, or, just don't beat yourself. That's the biggest thing. Don't bury yourself early in a game because, you have a pick six, or you have don't do that. Just play, be okay with punting a few times and kicking a few field goals. Basically, this game was over once the Steelers got up 9-0. Honestly, if we're really going to be honest about it. Once they got up 2 scores, it was like, okay, this game's over. And so, to me, when you're good enough to do that, you got to do that. You got to just be patient. And I think they're patient. And they're being smart early in the season, and they're getting better, and they're building and improving. That's what you want.
Paul, I wanted to ask about Darnell Washington because I think there were only 2 guys on the offense that had more targets than him. One was Kenneth Gainwell out of the backfield, which just by the design of the offense, I don't know how much stock you put in that. The other was DK Metcalf. Other than that, they were going to Darnell Washington a lot. They hit him for that big 36-yard play on the first snap of the game. But they kept going back to him. And it's very interesting to me how they're using him, because clearly he's their best blocker, right? Clearly, whether it's pass blocking, run blocking, of him, Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, he can do that the best. There's no question about that. But it does seem like they want to throw the ball to him a little bit more. Is it a function of defenses are not expecting it? The Browns are not expecting you to go to Darnell Washington very often just because of his size as a lumbering dude. Like you saw him on that long catch. He's not going to go for an 80-yard touchdown. Maybe Pat Freiermuth takes that all the way. Maybe Jonnu Smith takes that all the way. Darnell Washington doesn't, but he puts you in field goal range instantly. So is he – I guess the question I should be asking is, do you see him as a gadget player that they're going to catch teams off guard with from time to time? Or do you think they seriously want him to be involved like this and that he may be pushing, especially Pat Freiermuth, but maybe even to some extent Jonnu Smith, down the depth chart a little bit, even in terms of the pass targets?
Well, with his size, and he's obviously a very good safety valve kind of player. He's obviously somebody they're slowly but surely finding ways to get involved in the offense. Obviously the forgotten guy, the guy that's sort of getting left behind is Pat Freiermuth. But here's the thing. If you could figure out how to make Darnell Washington a functional receiver, which I kind of think they did today, I'm not sure what you would do with Pat Freiermuth because there's really nowhere to play him. Jonnu Smith's better than him, and they obviously brought him in to be a big part of, whatever. And you've got Darnell Washington, who now is a blocker, and you're not giving up that much as a receiver. That's what's going to be interesting going forward is, do we continue to see Pat Freiermuth slowly but surely sort of get moved aside, if that makes sense? Because if they can get what they're getting out of him, which is catching passes, and I'm talking about Washington, catching passes, now all of a sudden you don't have to take him off the field. So he's on the field, they can't just say, oh, well, this guy's in, so it's a passing down, or that guy's in because it's a rushing down. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to for me, at least. I think that he's versatile, and they're trying to find ways to get the ball to him. One interesting thing about it is how many targets today did they have to a receiver not named DK Metcalf?
I'm going down the list here, Paul. I see the one to Roman Wilson, and I think that is it. And to his credit, he did turn that into an 11-yard catch, but as I'm looking down the box score, just the one.
One. Now, I don't know that it's going to be like that. Obviously, they have a couple of injuries and a couple of guys banged up, but to me, they need to go get a second receiver. I don't know. There's guys out there that some of these teams might be, falling apart, and so there's guys out there that might be available. But to me, Adam, that's an indictment in some ways that you only threw one time to a receiver not named DK Metcalf, and it's not like, it's not like they're even trying to sort of build that part of their game. That's the other part of it.
No, but to his credit, DK Metcalf is still putting up the numbers, and are we starting to see why they felt so comfortable not only giving up draft capital, but then giving him a bunch of money and then moving on from George Pickens? Because what I'm seeing is this guy's a professional, and they haven't had a professional like him in that number one receiver role in a long time. And that's not just a slight on George Pickens. I think there's been a lot of guys. Chase Claypool didn't work with him. Those guys, it seemed like they were focused on the wrong things. Jonnu Smith is DK Metcalf is just so solid, isn't he?
Oh, well, he's built like a house. He's physical, he's fast, he's got really good hands. I mean, the catch he made on the sideline early in the game, that catch down the sideline that was thrown, perfectly by Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we haven't seen catches like that since Antonio Brown. I mean, he's that good. I don't know that he's Antonio Brown quite, but he's really good. And what's amazing is he's doing all this, even though everybody in the stadium knows he's really the Steelers' only option. Best option going down the field. You have guys that, and I have to look at the snaps. Obviously, they had some guys hurt, but, they still had, 4 receivers or 5 receivers in uniform. It's not like, just because it's just because like Calvin Austin was banged up. I mean, they still got other guys. I mean, Miller, Skoranek. I mean, they still got some other guys that, So to me, there is not a threat on the other side of the field that should scare anybody. And yet Metcalf is still putting up numbers like he is. And when he catches it, I just love he's always got a full head of steam. He's fast. He's physical. I like him a lot.
Yeah, and what impresses me the most about him, Paul, is the footwork and the way he is able to do things in tight spaces. Because of his size, you wouldn't think of him as particularly athletic, but there's been multiple. There was the touchdown last game out in Dublin. There was another play today on the sideline where I feel like if that was a ball for George Pickens goes out of bounds at the spot where he catches it. But DK Metcalf is able to spin, get another, 7 or 8 yards, something like that on that play. And he's doing that with consistency. He did it in New York in the first game against the Jets, just off the top of my mind. So he's tall. He can go up and make those combat catches, but he is so technical as well in a way that a guy like George Pickens was not. And I think we're seeing that pay off. He's on pace for a huge season. If he can stay healthy, it'll be interesting to see. Can he, especially given how much the Steelers are leaning on him at the moment? Paul, you mentioned the trade market with the receiver situation. I think adding emphasis to that is you mentioned that schedule coming up is maybe tougher than we anticipated with Indy, the Chargers. They're looking like pretty good teams, Paul, that you're going to have to go out and beat. Does that add pressure to this wide receiver 2 conversation? Because things are looking pretty good in the AFC North, but if you're competing for seeding and stuff, those are the teams you're going to have to beat. Does Omar Khan have some difficult decisions to make?
Well, I mean, again, I think at some point you have to go out and find that second guy. I mean, they just don't have it. And I'll tell you the other thing about it is Just as an aside, George Pickens today, 9 receptions, 168 yards, and a touchdown. So he seems to be fitting in Dallas pretty good. You know, I kind of said this before. I'm not sure why you don't keep him for this year and have him and Metcalf. And then, move on from him. To me, what they get, a 3rd-round pick or 4th-round, whatever they got for him, to me, that is almost inconsequential to we're going all in this year, allegedly. We're going to get Jalen Ramsey. We're going to get, this guy. We went and got DK Metcalf. We got Aaron Rodgers. And why wouldn't you keep George Pickens here? I mean, I know he's kind of a pain in the rear at times, but the bottom line is if you have those 2 guys, we're not talking about any of this. We might be talking about an offense that looks like it's unstoppable at times. And so, you had that guy, that second receiver. And not only did you not turn him into somebody you could use this year, you waited till after the draft to trade it. That whole transaction stinks to the high heavens to me because it felt like to me you had that second guy here. You had him. And he was in your salary cap and everything else. It wasn't going to cost you hardly any money. And he goes away, and I think you would probably, he goes away at the end of the season. So what? Like if you're playing to win this year, play to win this year.
Well, I think part of the problem, Paul, is that so much of that offseason conversation is we did not think that they were going to be playing, that they were as all in, and they were looking toward this quarterback draft class and accruing capital to be able to move up if they had, an 8, 9, 10 win season, having the ability to go up and trade up for whoever it is that's going to be in the draft. I got to say, Paul, that's changing the conversation for me as well of like, are there any of these college quarterbacks that you're looking at right now and saying, that's better than 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers? Because this quarterback class is looking rough. We just saw Drew Aller lost for the season, got James Franklin fired today. We got a video about that on our PG Penn State YouTube channel. So if you're a Penn State fan, make sure you check that out. But this class is falling apart. Don't you have to maybe use some of this draft capital you built up for what you have now as opposed to what you're thinking about for the future?
I know we're talking about the Steelers, but just as an aside, you're a knitter. So I got to ask real quickly, give me your thoughts on them firing a guy, paying $50 million for a guy to go away. What are your thoughts real quick?
Well, the private equity investors, I think, are the ones going to be paying for that, Paul. It sounds like with the Big Ten chasing this $2 billion. I thought it was time. I have much more mixed feelings about it, I think, than most. I think James Franklin did a great job building Penn State, but clearly he is not the guy to transcend whatever issues it has as a program. So it was time. That's how I view that situation. But part of that was he bet on the wrong quarterback. And I think you don't want to take this moment for granted with Aaron Rodgers. It might be a short moment of time that this is going to work this way, right?
Exactly. I mean, you've got, Alar, you've got Arch Manning, you've got all these guys, and I don't know if any of them are good.
Nussmeier, Klubnik, Lenoris Sellers is off in the wilderness
one of these
now.
guys, I'm kind of like, what is going on? None of these guys are somebody that I would pick right now. I don't like any of them. So, maybe you need to find a way to squeeze another year out of Aaron Rodgers and hope that the next class is better.
And put more weapons around them.
But again, I go back to this. They were trying to win this year based on all the moves they made. The only one that made no sense was trading George Pickens. If you're trying to win for this year, made no sense. You had wide receiver too. You went out and it's clear next year. Okay, you're not going to pay George Pickens $30 million if you're already paying DK Metcalf. Let him walk. That 3rd round pick or whatever they got is inconsequential. Who cares? Like. It's one of these things where I think sometimes these teams, like they do things, right, that are traditionally what they're supposed to do without really just taking a look and saying, this is a different situation. This is a situation we are trying really hard right now to win right now. And we went out and got a 32-year-old cornerback, a 42-year-old quarterback, right? A 35-year-old slot corner. We went out and we did these things because we're going to take a shot at it. We brought in a 31-year-old tight end. we're going to take a shot at it. Well, if you're going to do that, do that. Stop, with this. Well, hey, we got. Instead of letting Pickens walk for nothing, we got a third-round pick. Well, who cares? That doesn't help you this year. Anyway, that's just me. Sorry, ran over.
Unless you trade that third-round pick for someone else. So we'll monitor that situation. Paul, how hard would this team have to try to lose the AFC North at this point? I haven't checked out the latest odds at FanDuel, but if you want to check out the future markets, I'm sure they're pretty favorable for the Steelers. So make sure you check out our friends at FanDuel there. But Paul, we'll see what the Ravens do this week, but it does increasingly feel like it's going to be difficult for them to give this up, especially now. It's interesting because I think you're setting up an interesting game on Thursday against the Bengals. This is not a spot where Mike Tomlin teams tend to perform. Thursday coming off a Sunday division opponent. I think there's some horrific stat about how often they lose those games, but if you win that game, Paul, you're 5-1. Man, it really does let you wonder how far this team can go.
I mean, I'm watching the Bengals right here on this monitor right above me. They look horrific. I mean, Joe Flacco is 90 years old. Again, think about how desperate you have to be as an organization that Joe Flacco is regarded as your savior. I mean, that's how bad they are. And Joe Burrow ain't coming back till mid-December. To be honest, it'd be stupid to bring him back now at this point. I mean, the season's lost. Just let him heal up and wait till next year. I mean, the Ravens, to me, would it shock you if they go the route of Penn State today and it's the end for John Harbaugh? I mean, it just seems like it's that toxic down there. It seems like it's that bad down there. It seems like, it's same thing with James Franklin. It's not about he's winning. You look at the situation at Penn State. Well, James Franklin was just in the Final Four last year. I mean, I wouldn't have fired him, but it sounds like there was a lot more at play up there around and in the building and around the administration. And it sounds like that's going on in Baltimore, where players are unhappy, players are openly questioning what's going on. You know what I mean? The front office might not be happy. I mean, it would not shock me if he's fired tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he will be. I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the only saving grace there is that you do have the Lamar Jackson. You have that brutal early season schedule that they had to deal with, and then you have a Lamar Jackson injury. Those are circumstances somewhat beyond John Harbaugh, but listen, they have the ammo if they want to make that move. So we'll monitor that. Paul, any final thoughts on the Browns as an opponent? You mentioned we talked a lot about Dillon Gabriel. The broadcast was talking up a lot of these rookies. That team looks bad today, Paul. And they don't look like they're going to be good for a while.
The Browns?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, if they're going to pin their next 3 years or 2 or 3 years on this kid, I just think they're going to be bad. They're the Browns. I laugh when people try and compare the Browns to the Pirates. I always say this. The Browns are incompetent, but at least they're trying, which makes them even more incompetent. The Pirates are incompetent, but they're not even trying. So they have the double whammy. But the Browns, I mean, people say, well, the Browns are like the Pirates. No, the Browns went out and traded for a quarterback who obviously had off-field issues, gave him $250 million. Why? Because he was regarded as a young guy in his prime that could win. That's why they went out and got him. You know what I'm saying? They keep trying to make these moves. They keep trying to acquire draft picks. They just don't know what to do. And so I don't think they're ever going to be good. I just don't. This organization is so bad and so horrific at talent evaluation and everything else that, I mean, I laughed today. The Cardinals nearly beat the Colts in Indianapolis. You know who the Cardinals quarterback was today because Kyler Murray's hurt? Jacoby Brissett, who threw for like 300 yards and like 3 touchdowns or something. He's better than what they have right now, and they had him, and they just threw him away. I just think that the Browns I honestly, let me look real quick. Let me look at this real quick, but I don't see where their next win is going to come, to be honest. So let's look at their schedule. Okay, I lied. Next week, they host they play host to the Dolphins, who, I mean, talk about another team that might fire their coach today. Next week they play host to the Dolphins. That would be, an epically bad game because both of those teams stink. But after that, they'll get killed at the Patriots. I bet you they don't win at the Jets. Ravens will come to town, and Ravens by then will have Lamar Jackson back. I mean, I don't know where their next win. If they don't beat the Dolphins next week, they could go the rest of the way without winning.
Well, we will monitor that as well. Paul, any final thoughts on this Steelers victory and what you want to see from them on this short week coming up against Cincinnati?
I want to see the same thing as I saw today, right? Good team playing bad team. Don't beat yourself. Make the other team beat you, and they're not capable of it. And guess what? You get another win. And then you get 9 or 10 days off to get everybody healthy for, a stretch of really tough games. It's not about style points. It's about winning. It's about winning football games. Today they came and they won a football game. And then, Thursday you're going to play a bad Bengals team. And you know what? Go win the game. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a good team. They did have a couple of injuries. I don't know where they're at because I wasn't in the post game. We'll see what that looks like on a short week. I don't know, what that's going to look like in terms of who's going to be available. That could be something to monitor. But for the most part, I'm just watching this Bengals game up here, and I'm like, boy, are they bad. So there's that.
Yes, so we will be talking about that all week. Paul, you and I will be back with the Steelers postgame show on Thursday after Steelers-Bengals in Cincinnati, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel for that. Also got plenty more coming from our Steelers insiders, Jerry Dulac, Ray Fittipaldo from Acrisure Stadium. Later on this evening, we'll also have Christopher Carter, Brian Batko, myself, talking all week on the North Shore Drive podcast. So hit that subscribe button. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And check out all of our written work at post-gazette.com. Please consider a subscription there. Paul will have his column there. He'll also have his live show. We'll be back on Monday through Wednesday this week, setting you up for that next game. So lots coming your way. Please hop on board if you haven't already, and we will talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.